The sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the distant mountains, painting the sprawling ranch in hues of orange and purple. A gentle breeze rustled through the tall grass meadows, carrying the scent of wildflowers and damp earth. Here, miles from the nearest town, nestled in the heart of the valley, was my sanctuary. Years of calculated risk, silent operations, and morally gray decisions had led me to this. A peaceful retirement, a loving family, and acres of land. Life. Sarah, a vibrant woman with an artist's soul, tended to her garden, humming a soft melody as she pruned her prize-winning roses. Our two children, 8-year-old Emily and 10-year-old Tom, chased fireflies in the twilight, their laughter echoing through the tranquil IT was a scene of pure, unadulterated bliss, a far cry from the sterile, utilitarian environments I had once known. But beneath the surface of this idyllic existence lay a dormant volcano, a skill set honed over decades of covert operations. Waiting for the slightest tremor to awaken it, I had buried that part of myself, convinced that I could leave it behind, shed it like an old skin. That I was wrong. The ranch, named Havenwood, was more than just a home. It was a carefully constructed fortress of solitude. High fences, motion sensors, and strategically placed cameras provided a discreet layer of security, a silent promise to my family that they were safe under my watch. Sarah, bless her heart, thought I was just being thorough, a remnant of my overly cautious personality. She didn't know the half of it that I sat on the porch swing, sipping a glass of iced tea, my eyes scanning the perimeter. Old habits die hard. That I analyzed every shadow, every rustle of leaves, every flicker of movement in the distance. It wasn't paranoia. It was simply a heightened awareness, a reflex ingrained in my very being. This land, this life, this family, it was everything I had ever wanted, everything I had fought for, and I would be damned if anyone or anything threatened to take it away. That I knew this peace might be temporary, a fragile bubble in a chaotic world, but I was determined to protect it, to defend it with every fiber of my being, using every skill at my disposal. However unorthodox they might be, I just hoped it wouldn't come to that. Little did I know, the storm was already brewing on the horizon, disguised as a meticulously manicured lawn and a pearl-clutching sense of self-righteousness. Her name was Karen, and she was about to learn that some lines should never be crossed. Havenwood was about to become a battlefield. The tranquility shattered like glass. It began with a vehicle, a pristine white SUV that seemed incongruous against the backdrop of our rustic ranch. It crunched to a halt at the edge of our property, the driver's side door swinging open with unnecessary force. The figure emerged, a woman sculpted from suburban outrage and an unwavering belief in her own authority. This was Karen. She marched across the dry grass with the determined stride of a general inspecting her troops, her designer handbags swinging like a weapon. Her perfectly coiffed blonde hair bounced with each step, and her sunglasses, perched precariously on her nose, couldn't quite conceal the simmering indignation in her eyes. That I watched her approach, my senses on high alert. The fireflies were gone, the laughter silenced. Sarah had ushered the children inside. Sensing the shift in the atmosphere, that my hand instinctively drifted towards the small of my back, a phantom sensation where my sidearm used to reside. Old habits. You, she bellowed, her voice echoing across the open space. Are you the owner of this eyesore? I rose from the porch swing, my movements deliberate and controlled. I am, I replied, my voice calm and even, a stark contrast to her shrill tone. Can I help you? Help me, she scoffed, adjusting her sunglasses. You're in violation of HOA Code 37B, subsection 9, unsightly vegetation. She gestured dramatically towards a patch of wildflowers blooming near the fence line. Those weeds are a disgrace to this community. They must be removed immediately. I suppressed a sigh. Wildflowers. That was it. This woman was disrupting the peace of my home, threatening my family's serenity, over a patch of wildflowers. The absurdity of it all was almost comical. Almost. Those aren't weeds, I explained patiently. They're wildflowers. They attract pollinators and add to the natural beauty of the area. I don't care what they are, she shrieked, her face reddening. They're unsightly. They violate the code. And frankly, she leaned closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, They lower property values. I held her gaze, my expression unwavering. This property is not part of your HOA, I stated firmly. We are not subject to your rules or regulations. Her eyes narrowed. Oh, but you are, she insisted, pulling a crumpled document from her handbag. I have proof. This land was annexed into the Shadow Creek Estates development back in, well, it doesn't matter when. The point is, you're in violation, and I expect you to rectify the situation immediately. This was it. The tremor that awakened the volcano. The intrusion that shattered the peace. Karen had crossed the line, and she had no idea who she was dealing with. I took a slow, deliberate breath, mentally cataloging the details of her appearance, her posture, her micro-expressions. Years of training had honed my observational skills to a razor's edge. The expensive handbag, the designer sunglasses, the meticulously maintained appearance. It all spoke of a life built on control and the enforcement of perceived social norms. This wasn't just about wildflowers. It was about power. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, I said, my voice still calm, still measured. I purchased this property 5 years ago. The title search clearly indicated that it was not subject to any HOA restrictions. Well, things change, she snapped, waving the crumpled document in the air. And I have proof right here that you are now part of Shadow Creek Estates. I held out my hand. May I see that? She hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly handed me the document. It was a poorly photocopied page, barely legible, with a series of legal-sounding phrases and official-looking seals. I scanned the document, instantly recognizing the inconsistencies. The font was wrong, the seals were misaligned, and the legal jargon was a jumbled mess of meaningless phrases. It was a forgery, and a rather amateurish one at that. This is interesting, I said, carefully choosing my words. But I'm afraid this document is not valid. It appears to be a fabrication. Her face flushed crimson. How dare you, she shrieked. Are you accusing me of forging documents? I'm simply stating the facts, I replied calmly. This document is not legitimate, and therefore, your claim that this property is subject to your HOA regulations is unfounded. I'll have you know that I am a respected member of this community, she declared, her voice trembling with indignation. I'm on the HOA board. I volunteer at the local school. I'm a pillar of society. That may be, I said, but it doesn't change the fact that this document is not valid. I suggest you take it back to your HOA and have them review it. Perhaps they can provide you with something more convincing. I handed the document back to her. Careful to avoid any physical contact, I wanted to de-escalate the situation, to avoid any further confrontation. I knew that I could easily intimidate her, that I could use my training to shut her down quickly and efficiently. But that wasn't the way. Not yet. I wanted to give her a chance to back down, to walk away with some semblance of dignity. But I knew, deep down, that she wouldn't. People like Karen rarely do. Their egos are too fragile, their sense of entitlement too deeply ingrained. She would escalate. She would push. She would continue to harass me and my family until she got what she wanted. And that's when things would get interesting. Convincing? Karen sputtered, her voice rising another octave. I'll give you convincing. I'll have the entire HOA board down here. We'll see how you like it when you're facing a unanimous vote to condemn your property. That sounds like a waste of everyone's time, I countered, maintaining my composure. I'm confident that a simple title search will confirm that this property is not part of your HOA. I'm happy to provide you with a copy of my deed, if you'd like. It was a bluff, of course, that I wasn't happy to do anything for her, but I knew that offering to cooperate, to provide evidence, would make her even angrier. It would undermine her sense of control, her belief that she could bully me into submission. And I was right. Her eyes flashed with rage. I don't need your deed, she shrieked. I have the authority to enforce the HOA code, and I will. Those weeds are coming down, one way or another. She took a step closer, invading my personal space. I resisted the urge to flinch, to react in any way that would betray my discomfort. I stood my ground, my gaze unwavering. I understand that you're upset, I said, my voice still calm, still reasonable. But I'm asking you to please leave my property. You're trespassing, and you're harassing my family. Trespassing, she scoffed. This is for the good of the community. I'm protecting property values. I'm doing what's right. You're bullying. I corrected her. You're using your position on the HOA board to harass and intimidate people who don't agree with you. And that's not right. I could see the gears turning in her head. She was trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation, how to reassert her dominance. She couldn't understand why I wasn't backing down, why I wasn't cowering in fear. What she didn't realize was that I had faced far worse than an angry HOA Karen, that I had faced trained killers, ruthless dictators, and corrupt government officials. I had stared death in the face countless times, and I had never blinked. Karen was nothing but a minor annoyance, a mosquito buzzing in my ear, but a mosquito can still carry disease, and I wasn't about to let her infect my family, my home, my peace of mind. Fine, she said, her voice dripping with venom. I'll leave, but this isn't over. I'll be back, and next time, I'll have the entire HOA board with me. We'll see how you like it then. She turned and stomped back towards her SUV, her perfectly coiffed hair bouncing with each angry step that I watched her go, my senses still on high alert that I knew she would be back. And I knew that the next confrontation would be far more difficult, far more dangerous. But I was ready. I had spent years preparing for this moment, for the moment when I would have to defend my family, my home, my way of life. And I wouldn't hesitate to do whatever it took to protect them, even if it meant unleashing the dormant volcano that lay buried deep inside me. The next few days were deceptively quiet. The sun continued to rise and set. The birds continued to sing, and my children continued to chase fireflies in the twilight. But the peace was a fragile facade, a thin veil concealing the tension that hung heavy in the air. That I knew Karen wouldn't simply disappear. She was the type to hold a grudge, to obsess over perceived slights, to seek revenge for any perceived loss of power. And I was right. The first sign of escalation came in the form of anonymous letters. They arrived in our mailbox, addressed to the owners of Havenwood, filled with thinly veiled threats and personal attacks. They criticized our landscaping, our choice of paint colors, even the way our children played in the yard. They were clearly designed to intimidate us, to make us feel unwelcome in our own home. That I showed the letters to Sarah, trying to downplay their significance. Just some crank mail, I said, forcing a smile. Don't worry about it. But I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew that this was more than just crank mail. She knew that someone was watching us. Someone was deliberately trying to make us uncomfortable. The next escalation was more direct. While Sarah was out grocery shopping, someone vandalized our mailbox, spray painting the words HOA rules in bright red letters. It was a petty act, but it was also a clear message. Karen was escalating her tactics, and she wasn't afraid to break the law to get what she wanted. That I cleaned up the vandalism, trying to shield my children from the ugliness of it all. But they saw the anger in my eyes, the tension in my jaw. They knew that something was wrong. Then came the truly disturbing incident. One afternoon, while Emily and Tom were playing in the backyard, they came running into the house, their faces pale with fear. There's a strange man at the fence, Emily cried. He's taking pictures of us. I grabbed my binoculars and rushed to the back door. Sure enough, there was a man standing at the edge of our property, snapping photos with a telephoto lens. He was clearly trespassing, and he was clearly targeting my children. That I didn't hesitate. That I grabbed my rifle, loaded it with non-lethal rounds, and stormed out of the house. The man saw me coming and immediately turned to flee. But I was too fast. I fired a warning shot into the air, and he froze in his tracks. That I approached him cautiously, my rifle trained on his chest. What are you doing here? I demanded, my voice cold and hard. He stammered and stuttered, trying to explain himself. He claimed that he was just a birdwatcher, that he was simply taking pictures of the scenery. But I didn't believe him. That I knew that he was working for Karen, that he was trying to intimidate my family, to make us feel unsafe in our own home. But as I questioned him further, a different motive began to emerge. That it wasn't just about the wildflowers, or the HOA rules, or even about power. That it was about something far more personal, far more malicious. It turned out Karen had been trying to buy our land for years, wanting to expand her own property that we refused to sell, and now she was determined to drive us out by any means necessary. That's when she crossed the line. That's when the game changed. It wasn't just about a code violation anymore. That it was about my family, my home, my life, and I wasn't about to let her win. The man, sweating and terrified, readily confessed everything. Karen had hired him to take the photos, promising him a hefty sum of money to make things uncomfortable for us. She had even provided him with a detailed description of my children, their daily routines, and their favorite play areas. The information was chillingly specific, a clear indication of how far she was willing to go. That I released the man, warning him never to return to my property. He scrambled away, disappearing down the road in a cloud of dust that I watched him go, my mind racing. The time for restraint was over. Karen had crossed the line. She had threatened my children, invaded their privacy, and put them in danger. And for that, she would pay. That I walked back to the house, my movements deliberate and purposeful. Sarah met me at the door, her face etched with worry. "What happened?" she asked. "Who was that man?" I took her hand and led her inside, away from the prying eyes of the neighbors. That I sat her down at the kitchen table and told her everything. The anonymous letters, the vandalism, the man taking pictures of the children, and Karen's true motive for wanting us gone. Sarah listened in stunned silence, her eyes widening with disbelief. "I can't believe she would do something like that," she whispered, her voice trembling. "She seemed so normal." "Appearances can be deceiving," I said, my voice grim. "Karen is a dangerous woman, and she's not going to stop until she gets what she wants." "What are we going to do?" Sarah asked, her eyes filled with fear. "Are we going to have to move?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "We're not going anywhere. This is our home, and I'm not going to let her drive us out. That I'm going to protect you and the children, no matter what it takes." As I spoke those words, I felt a shift within me, a subtle but profound change in my demeanor. The retired operative, the man who had tried to bury his past, was gone. In his place stood a hardened warrior, a skilled strategist, a ruthless protector. The volcano had erupted, and the molten lava of my past was now flowing freely through my veins. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my body, sharpening my senses, heightening my awareness, and my mind was racing, analyzing the situation, formulating a plan of action. That I knew that I couldn't rely on the police, or the courts, or any other conventional means of justice. Karen was too powerful, too well-connected. That I would have to take matters into my own hands. That I looked at Sarah, my eyes filled with a cold, unwavering resolve. "I'm going to take care of this," I said. "I promise you, Karen will never bother us again." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and trust. She knew that I was capable of anything, that I would do whatever it took to protect my family, and she knew that I wouldn't let her down. The game had changed, the rules had changed, and Karen was about to learn that she had made a grave mistake. She had awakened a sleeping giant, and now she was about to face the full force of my wrath. The first step was reconnaissance. That I needed to gather information, to understand the full scope of Karen's operation, to identify her weaknesses, and to assess the potential threats she posed. That I retreated to my study, a room that Sarah jokingly referred to as my man cave, but which was, in reality, my command center. The walls were lined with bookshelves filled with volumes on military history, strategy, and espionage, and a large map of the surrounding area hung above my desk, marked with key locations and potential escape routes. I started with Karen herself. That I pulled up her profile on the HOA website, studying her photo, her biography, her list of accomplishments. She was a successful businesswoman, a pillar of the community, and a master manipulator. She had a reputation for being assertive, uncompromising, and ruthlessly efficient. She was also a control freak, obsessed with order and perfection. Next, I researched the other members of the HOA board. That I wanted to know who her allies were, who her enemies were, and who was likely to be swayed by her influence. That I discovered that the board was divided into two factions, those who supported Karen and those who opposed her. The balance of power was delicate, and I knew that I could potentially exploit that division to my advantage. That I also investigated Karen's personal life. That I wanted to know her vulnerabilities, her secrets, her weaknesses. That I discovered that she was deeply insecure about her appearance, obsessed with maintaining a youthful image, and terrified of growing old. She was also involved in a bitter feud with her sister over a family inheritance. The more I learned about Karen, the more I realized that she was a complex and multifaceted individual. She wasn't just a stereotypical HOA Karen. She was a woman driven by ambition, insecurity, and a deep-seated need for control. That I then turned my attention to her resources. I needed to know how much money she had, what kind of connections she had, and what kind of legal support she could call upon. I discovered that she was independently wealthy, with a vast network of contacts in the local business community. She also had a close relationship with a powerful attorney who specialized in real estate law. Karen was a formidable opponent, but she wasn't invincible. She had weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and blind spots, and I knew that I could exploit those weaknesses to bring her down. Finally, I assessed the potential threats to my family. I reinforced the security measures around the ranch, installing additional cameras, motion sensors, and alarm systems. I also trained Sarah and the children on how to react in an emergency situation, teaching them self-defense techniques and escape routes. I knew that Karen wouldn't hesitate to use any means necessary to get what she wanted. And I wasn't about to take any chances. I was determined to protect my family, no matter what it took. With the assessment complete, I was ready to formulate a plan of action. I knew that I couldn't simply confront Karen head-on. She was too powerful, too well-connected. I would have to be strategic, methodical, and ruthlessly efficient. I would have to use every ounce of my training to outwit her, outmaneuver her, and ultimately defeat her. The first phase of my plan would focus on dismantling her power and influence within the HOA. My plan began subtly. I knew I couldn't come at her directly. She'd expect that. Instead, I needed to chip away at her confidence, to make her question her own judgment, to plant seeds of doubt that would slowly erode her control. It was time for a little psychological warfare. The first step was to let her know I was watching, not in a threatening way, but in a way that would make her uneasy. I started by subtly mirroring her actions. If she drove past the ranch, I would be standing on the porch, watching her. If she went to the grocery store, I would accidentally run into her, offering a polite but distant nod. These encounters were brief, almost innocuous, but they were designed to send a message. I was aware of her movements, and I was paying attention. I also started to exploit her insecurities. I knew that she was obsessed with her appearance, so I made a point of complimenting other women in the community, highlighting their natural beauty and their effortless style. I made sure that Karen overheard these conversations, subtly implying that she was trying too hard, that her efforts were somehow artificial. Then, I began to undermine her authority within the HOA. I attended the next board meeting, prepared to challenge her on every issue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make any accusations, but I asked pointed questions, demanding evidence and justification for her decisions. I used logic and reason to expose the flaws in her arguments, subtly highlighting her incompetence and her lack of preparation. I made sure to maintain eye contact, holding her gaze with an unwavering intensity. I knew that eye contact was a powerful tool, a way to assert dominance and control. I used it sparingly, but effectively, letting her know that I wasn't intimidated by her, that I wasn't afraid to challenge her. During one particularly heated debate about landscaping regulations, I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a low, almost conspiratorial whisper. "Karen," I said, "are you sure this is the best use of your time? I mean, shouldn't you be focusing on more important matters, like, say, ensuring the safety and security of the community?" The implication was clear. I knew about her actions. I knew about the man taking pictures of my children, and I wasn't afraid to expose her. Her face paled, and she stammered a weak response. I knew that I had struck a nerve. After the meeting, several board members approached me, expressing their concerns about Karen's behavior. They were tired of her bullying tactics, her constant demands, and her blatant disregard for the rules. They were looking for a way to challenge her authority, and they saw me as their champion. I knew that I was making progress. Karen was starting to crack. Her confidence was waning, and her control over the HOA was slipping. But I also knew that she wouldn't give up easily. She would retaliate, she would fight back, and she would use every weapon at her disposal. But I was ready for her. I had anticipated her every move, and I had prepared a counter-strategy for every possible scenario. The psychological warfare was just the beginning. The real battle was about to begin. While the psychological games played out, I continued to gather intelligence, digging deeper into Karen's past and present. I knew that the more information I had, the better equipped I would be to anticipate her moves and exploit her vulnerabilities. But I was careful to stay within the bounds of the law, relying solely on publicly available information and ethical investigative techniques. I wasn't about to stoop to her level. I started with public records. I scoured county archives, searching for property records, court filings, and any other documents that might shed light on her past. That I discovered that she had been involved in several legal disputes over the years, including a lawsuit with a former business partner and a contentious divorce. These records painted a picture of a woman who was litigious, demanding, and prone to conflict. That I also examined her social media presence. That I created a fake profile and infiltrated her online circles, monitoring her posts, her comments, and her interactions with others. That I learned that she was obsessed with maintaining a perfect image online, carefully curating her posts to project an aura of success, happiness, and social influence. She was also prone to making disparaging remarks about people she perceived as being beneath her, revealing a snobbish and condescending attitude. That I even delved into her family history. That I discovered that her father had been a successful businessman who had amassed a considerable fortune, but had also been known for his ruthless tactics and his disregard for the rules. That it seemed that Karen had inherited her father's ambition and his willingness to do whatever it takes to get what she wanted. Point one particularly revealing discovery was a series of emails that she had exchanged with her attorney. These emails confirmed that she had been plotting to acquire my property for years, and that she had been willing to use any means necessary to achieve her goal. The emails also revealed that she had been aware of the man taking pictures of my children, and that she had even authorized him to trespass on my property. This was the smoking gun I needed. That I compiled all of this information into a detailed dossier, documenting her history of legal disputes, her online behavior, her family background, and her secret emails. That I knew that this dossier could be used to expose her hypocrisy, to undermine her credibility, and to potentially even bring criminal charges against her. But I wasn't ready to use it yet. That I wanted to wait for the right moment to deploy it with maximum impact. I was playing the long game, patiently building my case, waiting for Karen to make a fatal mistake. In the meantime, I continued to monitor her movements, to anticipate her next move, and to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. That I knew that she was growing increasingly desperate, that she was starting to feel the pressure, and that she was likely to lash out in unpredictable ways. But I was ready for her. I had anticipated her every move, and I had prepared a counter-strategy for every possible scenario. The information gathering was complete. It was time to move on to the next phase of my plan, the counteroffensive. The time had come to launch the counteroffensive. I couldn't directly accuse Karen of criminal activity without risking a defamation lawsuit, and frankly, I preferred a more nuanced approach. The goal wasn't just to punish her, but to completely dismantle her power base within the HOA, ensuring she could never threaten my family again. I started by anonymously leaking carefully selected pieces of information from my dossier to key members of the community. I focused on her hypocrisy, highlighting instances where she had violated the very rules she so zealously enforced on others. I sent photos of her own overgrown flower beds, far worse than my wildflowers, to several neighbors known for their pristine lawns. I forwarded copies of her condescending social media posts to people she had publicly praised, revealing her two-faced nature. The effect was immediate. Whispers began to circulate throughout the community, questioning Karen's judgment and her integrity. People who had once blindly followed her lead started to have second thoughts. Her carefully constructed image of perfection began to crumble. Next, I targeted her allies on the HOA board. I anonymously provided them with evidence of her manipulative tactics, her secret agendas, and her willingness to abuse her power for personal gain. I showed them how she had consistently misled them, used them, and ultimately betrayed their trust. This proved to be particularly effective. Several board members, feeling betrayed and disillusioned, began to distance themselves from Karen. They realized that she wasn't the selfless community leader they had thought she was, but a self-serving manipulator who was willing to sacrifice their interests for her own gain. During the next HOA meeting, I subtly amplified the growing dissent. I didn't make any direct accusations against Karen, but I asked pointed questions that exposed her inconsistencies and challenged her authority. I used her own words against her, quoting her past statements to highlight her hypocrisy. The other board members, emboldened by the leaked information and my subtle challenges, began to join in. They questioned her decisions, they challenged her authority, and they demanded accountability. Karen, visibly rattled, struggled to maintain control of the meeting. Then came the knockout blow that I presented evidence that Karen had been secretly using HOA funds to pay for personal expenses, including landscaping services at her own home and lavish vacations for herself and her family. The evidence was irrefutable, and the other board members were outraged that a motion was immediately made to remove Karen from her position on the HOA board, and a vote was scheduled for the following week. Karen, realizing that she had lost, stormed out of the meeting, vowing revenge. But it was too late. The damage was done. Her credibility was shattered, her support was gone, and her power base was completely dismantled. She had been exposed for what she was, a hypocritical, manipulative, and power-hungry bully who was willing to do anything to get what she wanted. The counteroffensive had been a resounding success, but I knew that this was just the beginning. Karen was down, but she wasn't out, and I knew that she would be back, more determined than ever to get revenge. Knowing Karen's vindictive nature, I knew she wouldn't simply accept her defeat and slink away quietly. She would likely retaliate, and I needed to be prepared for anything she might throw my way. So, while I had been dismantling her power within the HOA, I had also been quietly laying the groundwork for potential legal action. That I contacted a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Evans, who specialized in harassment and real estate law. I presented her with my dossier, outlining Karen's actions, providing evidence of her harassment, and highlighting her potential criminal behavior. Ms. Evans was impressed by the thoroughness of my investigation and agreed to represent me. Together, we began to meticulously document every instance of Karen's harassment, from the anonymous letters to the vandalism to the man taking pictures of my children. That we gathered evidence, took photographs, and interviewed witnesses. That we built a solid case, preparing for the possibility of a restraining order or even a lawsuit. That Ms. Evans also advised me to install additional security cameras around my property to record any future interactions with Karen or her associates. She explained that video evidence would be invaluable in court, providing irrefutable proof of her behavior. That I followed her advice, installing hidden cameras in strategic locations around the ranch, ensuring that every corner of my property was under surveillance. That I also purchased a high-quality audio recorder, which I carried with me at all times, ready to capture any conversations I might have with Karen. We also prepared a draft of a restraining order, outlining the specific actions that Karen would be prohibited from taking, including contacting me or my family, coming within a certain distance of my property, and making disparaging remarks about us online. We were ready to file the restraining order at a moment's notice should Karen cross the line again. In addition, Ms. Evans began researching the possibility of filing a lawsuit against Karen, alleging harassment, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She explained that such a lawsuit could potentially result in a significant financial settlement, which would not only compensate me for the damages I had suffered, but also deter Karen from engaging in similar behavior in the future. While I hoped that it wouldn't come to legal action, I was prepared to fight back with every weapon at my disposal. That I wasn't going to let Karen get away with what she had done. That I was going to hold her accountable for her actions, and I was going to ensure that she could never threaten my family again. The legal maneuvering was a crucial part of my overall strategy. That IT provided me with a safety net, a way to protect myself and my family from Karen's potential retaliation. IT also sent a clear message to Karen. I wasn't afraid to fight back, and I was prepared to use every legal means at my disposal to defend my rights. While the legal preparations were underway, I also recognized the importance of building community support. That I knew that Karen had a long history of bullying and intimidating her neighbors, and I suspected that many of them had been victimized by her over the years. That I decided to reach out to these neighbors, to offer them my support, and to create a united front against her behavior. I started by attending community events, such as neighborhood barbecues and HOA meetings. That I made a point of striking up conversations with people I didn't know, listening to their concerns, and offering my assistance. That I subtly steered the conversations towards Karen, asking about their experiences with her, engaging their level of support for her. That I quickly discovered that my suspicions were correct. Many of my neighbors had been subjected to Karen's bullying tactics, her arbitrary enforcement of HOA rules, and her condescending attitude. They were afraid to speak out against her, fearing retaliation, but they were also desperate for a way to stop her. That I offered them my support, assuring them that they weren't alone, and that I was willing to stand up to Karen on their behalf. I shared my own experiences with her, outlining her harassment and her attempts to drive me off my property. That I showed them the evidence I had gathered, including the anonymous letters, the vandalism, and the emails. Proving her malicious intent, my neighbors were shocked and appalled by what they saw. They realized that Karen wasn't just a strict enforcer of HOA rules, but a vindictive and dangerous woman who was willing to go to any lengths to get what she wanted. They began to share their own stories of being victimized by Karen, revealing a pattern of abuse that had gone on for years. They had been fined for minor infractions, harassed for their landscaping choices, and even threatened with legal action for trivial matters. Together, we formed a support group, a network of neighbors who were committed to standing up to Karen and holding her accountable for her actions. That we shared information, offered emotional support, and strategized about how to best challenge her authority. We also decided to attend the upcoming HOA meeting, where the vote on Karen's removal was scheduled to take place. That we planned to pack the meeting room with concerned citizens to demonstrate the overwhelming community opposition to her continued presence on the board. That I knew that this united front would be a powerful weapon against Karen. She had always relied on her ability to intimidate and divide her opponents, but now she was facing a united community that was determined to stand up to her. The community support was more than just a tactical advantage. It was a moral imperative that I wasn't just fighting for myself and my family. I was fighting for the rights of all my neighbors, for the right to live in peace and harmony, free from the tyranny of a power-hungry bully. The HOA meeting was standing room only. The air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. That I surveyed the room, taking in the faces of my neighbors, some familiar, others not. That I recognized the fear in their eyes, but also the glimmer of hope, the determination to finally stand up to Karen's tyranny. Karen arrived late, her face a mask of carefully controlled fury. She scanned the room, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sea of unfamiliar faces. She clearly hadn't expected this level of opposition. The meeting began with the usual formalities, but the tension was palpable. The motion to remove Karen from the board was quickly brought to the floor, and a heated debate ensued. Karen, fighting for her political life, launched into a tirade, accusing me of harassment, slander, and even criminal activity. She attempted to paint herself as the victim, a selfless community leader who was being unfairly targeted by a disgruntled neighbor. But her accusations fell flat. The other board members, emboldened by the community's support and armed with the leaked information, challenged her at every turn. They questioned her judgment, they exposed her inconsistencies, and they demanded accountability. Then it was my turn to speak. That I rose to my feet, my voice calm and measured. In stark contrast to Karen's shrill accusations, that I began by thanking the community for their support, acknowledging their courage in standing up to Karen's bullying tactics. Then, I presented my evidence. That I started with the forged annexation document, projecting a high-resolution image of it onto a large screen. That I pointed out the inconsistencies in the font, the misaligned seals, and the jumbled legal jargon, proving beyond a doubt that it was a fabrication. Next, I presented the evidence of Karen's misuse of HOA funds, projecting copies of her expense reports, her invoices, and her bank statements. The numbers spoke for themselves, irrefutably demonstrating her fraudulent activity. Finally, I played the audio recording of Karen's conversation with the man who had photographed my children. Her voice, cold and calculating, filled the room as she instructed him to make things uncomfortable for my family. The collective gasp went through the audience. But the final piece of evidence was the most damning. I displayed the emails between Karen and her lawyer, revealing her long-standing plot to acquire my property, her willingness to use any means necessary to achieve her goal, and her authorization of the man's trespass onto my land. The room fell silent. Even Karen was speechless, her face pale with shock and disbelief. She had been exposed, her lies and manipulations laid bare for all to see. That I concluded my presentation by looking directly at Karen, my voice filled with a quiet but unwavering resolve. "This is over," I said. "Your lies have been exposed, your power has been dismantled, and your reign of terror is finally at an end." The vote was swift and decisive. Karen was unanimously removed from the HOA board. The room erupted in applause, a collective sigh of relief washing over the community. Her reign of terror was finally over. But the consequences for Karen went far beyond her removal from the HOA board. Her actions had shattered her credibility, alienated her friends, and exposed her true character to the world. Her carefully constructed image of perfection lay in ruins. The HOA immediately launched an investigation into her misuse of funds, and she was subsequently fined a substantial sum of money. She was also forced to repay all of the funds she had misappropriated, a significant financial blow to her already fragile ego. But the financial penalties were nothing compared to the social ostracization she faced. Her friends and acquaintances began to distance themselves from her, unwilling to associate with someone who had been exposed as a liar, a manipulator, and a bully. She was no longer invited to social gatherings, she was shunned at community events, and she became a pariah in her own neighborhood. Even her own family turned against her. Her sister, with whom she had been embroiled in a bitter feud over their inheritance, seized the opportunity to publicly condemn her actions. She released a statement to the local newspaper, denouncing Karen's behavior and expressing her sympathy for the victims of her abuse. That Karen's life began to unravel. Her business suffered, her relationships crumbled, and her mental health deteriorated. She became increasingly isolated, paranoid, and despondent. I heard through the grapevine that she had started drinking heavily, that she had lost her job, and that she was facing foreclosure on her home. That I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. But I quickly reminded myself of the pain and suffering she had inflicted on my family. She had brought this all on herself. That I never saw Karen again. She eventually moved out of the community, disappearing without a trace. That I heard rumors that she had relocated to another state, seeking a fresh start, but I never confirmed them. Her downfall served as a powerful lesson to the community. At IT demonstrated that no one, no matter how powerful or well-connected, is above the law or above the judgment of their peers. That IT showed that bullying ended. With Karen gone, a sense of peace and harmony returned to Havenwood and the surrounding community. The HOA, under new leadership, adopted a more collaborative and inclusive approach, focusing on building consensus and fostering a sense of community. The arbitrary rules and regulations that had been used to harass and intimidate residents were repealed, and a new era of transparency and accountability was ushered in. That my family and I were able to return to our peaceful existence, enjoying the beauty and tranquility of our ranch without the constant threat of harassment and intimidation. The wildflowers bloomed in abundance, attracting pollinators and adding to the natural beauty of the area. My children played in the yard without fear, their laughter echoing through the tranquil air. I spent more time with Sarah, tending to the garden, hiking in the mountains, and simply enjoying each other's company. We rediscovered the joy and simplicity of our life together, grateful for the peace and security we had fought so hard to protect. That I also made a conscious effort to reconnect with my neighbors, to build bridges, and to foster a sense of community. That I attended neighborhood gatherings, volunteered at local events, and simply made myself available to offer support and assistance whenever needed. The experience with Karen had taught me the importance of community, the power of unity, and the need to stand up to injustice, even when it is difficult or uncomfortable. That I realized that I couldn't simply retreat into my own private world, that I had a responsibility to contribute to the well-being of the community as a whole. That I also learned that my unique skills and experiences could be used for good, to protect the innocent, to defend the vulnerable, and to fight for justice. I had used my training to dismantle Karen's power base, to expose her lies and manipulations, and to hold her accountable for her actions, all without resorting to violence or illegal tactics. That I had used my skills to protect my family and my community, and I had done it legally, ethically, and effectively. That I had proven that it was possible to fight back against a bully, to stand up for what is right, and to achieve justice, without compromising my own values or principles. The sense of closure was profound. I had faced a formidable adversary. I had overcome numerous challenges, and I had emerged victorious. I had protected my family. I had restored peace to my community, and I had proven that even a retired Black Ops operative could find redemption and purpose in a peaceful life. Years have passed since Karen's downfall. The memory of her reign of terror has faded, replaced by the warmth of community and the simple joys of family life. But the experience left an indelible mark on me, a reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of even the most idyllic existence. That I often find myself reflecting on the events that unfolded, analyzing my own actions, and questioning whether I could have handled things differently. Did I go too far? Was I too ruthless? Did I let my past influence my decisions? The answer, I believe, is both yes and no. That I did what I had to do to protect my family and my community, that I used the skills and experiences I had acquired over a lifetime of covert operations, but I did so within the bounds of the law and within the confines of my own moral code. That I never resorted to violence, I never engaged in illegal activities, and I never compromised my own values. That I fought back against a bully, I stood up for what was right, and I achieved justice, all without sacrificing my own integrity. But I also recognized that the experience awakened a part of me that I had tried to bury, a darkness that still lingers beneath the surface. That I am a product of my past, a veteran of countless battles, a survivor of unimaginable horrors. That past will always be a part of me, shaping my perceptions, influencing my decisions, and defining who I am. But I refuse to let my past control me. I am committed to living a peaceful life, to raising my children in a safe and loving environment, and to contributing to the well-being of my community. That I will continue to use my skills and experiences for good, to protect the innocent, to defend the vulnerable, and to fight for justice. But I will do so with wisdom, compassion, and restraint. That I know that the darkness will always be there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to emerge. But I am confident that I can keep it at bay, that I can control my impulses, and that I can continue to live a life of peace and purpose. The wildflowers still bloom on my ranch, attracting pollinators and adding to the natural beauty of the area. My children still play in the yard without fear, their laughter echoing through the tranquil air. And I still sit on the porch swing with Sarah, sipping iced tea and watching the sun set over the mountains. The peace is real, the happiness is genuine, and the love is unconditional. And I know that I am capable of protecting it, of defending it, and of preserving it, no matter what challenges may lie ahead. The HOA Karen may be gone, but the lessons she taught me will remain forever etched in my memory. A reminder of the darkness that can be overcome with courage,